Did I hear you say something like, if the heart chakras were both open or connected, and if the situation wasn't loving, then he wouldn't even get an erection or something like that?
That's correct, yeah. Whoop. That's me. Better address that. That's correct, yes. The truth is actually, in the end, that if every chakra point, of course you've got the six that are out, and then you've got the seventh, right? So every chakra point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah? So that should be at the throat, by the way. But anyway. Yes, the truth is that when our heart chakra is open, or in fact the truth is that when every chakra is open, we won't actually be able to take an unloving action without. So maybe I need to explain more detail. If your connection with God is open, you've got a constant flow of divine love into you from your crown. Every other chakra will remain open, and while it's open, you will be unable to actually engage in any unloving transaction with anybody. So what that means is that you will be unable to actually physically engage in any transaction that is unloving while that state remains open. So the reality is you will not ever even be able to get, if it was a male, you would not ever be able to get an erection with any other person other than your soulmate. Does that make sense? So all of those males who want to play the field a bit are going to find that they won't even have a desire to play the field. Does that make sense? They'll only have a desire for one person. And that's the beauty of the way God created our soul. God created our soul in its pristine state, that if the soul is receiving divine love, it's impossible for the soul in that state to actually act out of harmony with the love that it's receiving in any way, sexually or truth-wise or any other way. So for example, the throat chakra is a lot about speaking truth. So while I'm receiving divine love, it's impossible for me to actually not continue speaking the truth without stopping the connection of divine love flowing. Does that make sense? So there's this automatic system, this automatic feedback system of you knowing automatically what love is and what love isn't by being sensitive to what the feelings are. And it affects every physical organ in your body, including your sexual organs. So the truth is you won't even have a desire for anyone other than your soulmate. Right? So it's not that you won't have a desire at all, because that in itself is out of harmony with love as well. But you will only have a desire for the other half of you. And that's the way God created it. So when you're perfectly in harmony with God's love, at that moment too, you will also be perfectly in harmony in all of your connections with every individual, and you will not be able to engage an individual in any way that's unloving. So let's say this individual comes to you and she projects sexually at you. It won't even enter you, right? So you'll notice the sexual projection because you're aware of everything, but it will not enter you, it will not arouse you, you won't feel a connection, you won't pander to it, you won't try and make her feel better, you won't even need to tell her about it even, it will just pass by you completely, and you won't feel raped by it or molested by the projection. So all of the negative and positive emotions that might normally occur, what we call positive by the way, but they're mostly addictive, would occur from that sexual projection, we will no longer actually respond to it at all. So if a person comes along and starts telling you a lie, right, which actually closes down their throat chakra as they're telling a lie, and if you can test this with kinesiology, right, you guys... Where's Gary? I can't see him at the moment. There he is. You've done some experiments, haven't you, when a person telling a lie, the throat chakra just stops immediately. Have you ever done those kind of experiments? It's quite interesting. Yep. Body goes weak straight away, yep, whenever you tell a lie, even if you think it's the truth. And your body will go weak, your throat chakra will close down. And so what will happen is you'll be walking around, and any person who's telling you a lie, you'll automatically know it's a lie. You don't need to even ask them anything else. You know that what is being said to you is a lie, just straight out. while this love is flowing through you, you are automatically sensitive to the truth of everything happening around you at the same time. Microphone? Yep.
What if that person believes they're speaking the truth, even though they're saying a lie?
Well, it depends whether it's an emotional belief or whether it's an intellectual belief. So if the person has an intellectual belief that they're speaking their emotional truth, and yet the emotion in them is completely different, their throat chakra will close down. If the person believes they are telling the truth and at the same time has an emotional belief that this is my truth, then the throat chakra will remain open. So it doesn't mean that they're telling you God's truth, it just means that they're telling you their truth. Does that make sense?
And if you are open to truth, will you recognise that that is not truth?
If you're open to God's truth, remember, and it's only this connection with God that's going to keep you open to God's truth. If you're open to God's truth, you will recognise that that is not God's truth, but it is their truth. If you're open to God's truth, you will recognise when they're lying about themselves or telling the truth about themselves. But you'll also recognise that even when they're telling the truth about themselves, whether it's God's truth or not. Can you see there's 4 possible permutations? It's like, it's either their truth, not their truth, and their truth can either be in harmony with God or out of harmony with God. Does that make sense? And you'll know every one of those circumstances if you have a permanent connection with God. So if you don't have a permanent connection with God, the only thing you'll know is whether they're telling their truth or not. You won't know whether it's God's truth or not. Does that make sense? And this is why most spirits on the natural love path are not able to determine what God's truth is. And this is why in the New Age movement in particular, they use the term your truth, my truth. You know, they use those terminology because on the natural love path, there is no way to determine what is the absolute truth. It's only when you're on the divine love path there is a way for you to determine what absolute truth is, and that is by this connection you have with God. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the connection with God, you see. That's why I'm always focusing you back on the connection with God. It's the connection with God that actually gives you the full truth of the universe and not just the truth you want to hear. And it's that beautiful connection that can be maintained. If we can pass the mic up there, Sue, thanks. We're just... Yes, it does. Yep. Can I ask, before you ask your question though, can I ask you how, like, what has happened to your throat? Throat cancer, yes. Yep. 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 And can you just hold it up closer to... Can you... Is it actually switched on? Because I just want to get a lot of this if we can. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
it's a bit better.
It's really the kick in the backside, losing my voice, no good at channel all the beautiful things that about love and learning to love yourself, which I channeled and never practiced once.
Yeah.
So it was a real kick in the arse, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the beauty of our law of attraction in a way.
Yeah.
Like, we can often fool ourselves to believing things are fine, but what happens to our body is a perfect reflection of what's really going on at any one point in time.
Well, I got a good lesson, didn't I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And this can be reversed as well,
Yeah.
of course.
Tomorrow would be good.
So the instantaneous reversal of years of practice, is that what you're...
Yeah, but I have a good... Well, I do have a serious question.
Yep.
I've been working a lot with Gary, and I know I've got a lot of anger in me, but
Yep.
I have great difficulty in demonstrating that anger.
Yes.
I mash things at home, but it's like playing a game in doesn't work.
So it's sort of like you bash things, but you're not really in the anger yourself.
No,
Yep.
I can't get there.
Yep.
And I've written out a list of judgments. I've done all the things you tell me to do, and
Yep.
it still doesn't work, and I'm getting very, very frustrated.
You're getting very, very angry, which is good. But let's one of the things I'd like to speak with you about is why the throat closed down, because it's related to this voicing of the anger.
Yeah.
So
Can I sit down now?
yep, sure you can.
Yeah.
So here's you. Maybe your dress might be a bit shorter, but anyway, here's you. And this is your throat region here, obviously, that's being affected the most by whatever the problem is. It's your throat region. And I'm just going to get out of this feedback area. The throat region here is very much about expressing your true emotion rather than expressing the emotion that you feel everyone else, including yourself, wants to hear from you. Right? So when I say expressing your truth, I'm not talking about the intellectual truth that you believe inside of yourself, but rather expressing your emotional truth. Now, what's happened for yourself is there's been a heavy close down of your desire to speak your emotional truth to people. And you, in fact, it went so far that you didn't want to even see your own emotional truth, let alone speak it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what happens then is this area of your body energetically, so if we're talking about the energy system in your spirit body now, this area of your body remains completely closed at that point. And in fact, inside of you there was an additional desire, and that is that other people recognise the emotional truth in you and then they speak it. So you've got also this additional desire that somebody else recognises how you feel and then they voice it for you. Right? There is this, I'm saying, there is this feeling inside of you too. And that's what created your cancer, actually, of the throat. So there's two sides to this story. One is that you personally are quite distant from the emotional truth of what you feel in terms of speaking that to others. And then the second thing is a requirement on the world around you then to recognise what's going on for you and act upon that or speak that for you. And that's the second half of the problem. So there's two sort of avenues or two emotions that need to be dealt with. The first one you're willing to actually accept. The second one you still want to deny, which is the reason why you can't feel it even in yourself. So first thing to do in terms of looking at this from an emotional perspective is, one, always say, and I'll put this in quotations for you for a moment, because obviously it's now difficult for you to say what you feel because of not having the voice to speak. But always say what you truly feel. And that is very, very different to what the New Age movement would tell you should be feeling. And that's very, very different to what a group of spirits would tell you should be feeling. And that's very, very different to what everyone else around you wants to hear. Right? And so when you say, and in your case, you can easily start to address this issue by writing what you feel, like rather than just saying it. So you can start writing, what do you feel? How do you feel about things? Now, you are right, there is an anger layer here that Gary has been trying to help you to get to, but we've got to look at the blockages to the emotion. If the emotion isn't automatically being engaged, then there must be a block to it. Does that make sense to you? So if there is anger in you, and you've done muscle testing and everything, and you can see, yes, there is anger in me, but when I go home and bash, no anger comes up and it just feels like I'm playing a game, then what we've got to do now is say, all right, let's give up on trying to express the anger for a moment. So just give that up for a while and ask yourself, what are the blockages to your anger? What are your belief systems about anger? So what are some of them? One of them is that it's not spiritual, right?
Yeah.
That it's just not spiritual to be angry.
Yeah.
But another one is if I say what I feel, in this case, if I say and express my anger, what will happen to me? What's going to happen to me?
People won't like me.
Yes.
Yes.
And so the addiction is...
I need to be liked, to be loved.
Yes.
I know that.
Okay, but let's go further with the addiction.
Yeah.
If I need to be liked or to be loved before I'll express myself, then what I'm actually doing is I'm actually projecting at the world around me that all of you have got to love me before I'm willing to tell you my truth. That's really what I'm saying. Now, logically, that's never going to happen because no one in the audience, there's going to be always people in the audience who don't agree with me. But if I have to be loved before I speak my truth, then I'm going to wait for everyone to love me before I speak. Does that make sense? And if I'm waiting for everyone to love me before I speak, my block is, while I'm waiting, I'm just going to sit there not speaking any truth, waiting for everyone around me to get to a point. And in a way, it's almost blaming them for not speaking my truth. Can you see that? It's almost putting the responsibility on them. The reason why I can't tell you the truth is none of you want to hear it. That's really what we're saying. Right? I don't want to tell you the truth, none of you want to hear it. But that's not a good excuse for you not to tell your own truth. Does that make sense? Even if no one wants to hear. So my suggestion is to look more sincerely at the reasons why you don't want to tell the truth. Does that make sense? And that you don't even want to tell the truth, let alone feel the truth. So if you have anger in you, for example, if you start expressing your anger, which is what you need to do to the people who, created a lot of this anger, which obviously some of them have passed now, right? But you can still express it. And when I say express it, I don't mean live in it and rage and scream at them. What I mean is say, I'm actually very angry with you because actually when I was little, and you, like, Mum, when I was little, this is what you did with me. You shut me down here, you shut me down there, you made me do this, and you start expressing, you don't even have to feel your anger yet, just express it. Now you can write it.
I've already done that, AJ.
Yep.
I've been through all that.
So why aren't you allowing yourself to feel it then?
I have no bloody idea.
Okay. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you are addicted to waiting for somebody else to give you the approval to do it. That's what I'm suggesting to you. In other words, everyone here has to want to hear it before you will speak it. Does that make sense? Everyone has to want it, hear it first, and then I'll do it. And that's an addiction, because that's making my speaking of the truth now reliant on every other person here.
I don't like that answer.
No. We usually don't like to hear our addictions. But it's the addictions that drive most of our behaviour. So the addiction is, I know, for example, that if I start telling my truth, half of you are not going to like me. Right? So I'm not going to be loved if I tell my truth. So what do? I learn that I'm not allowed to tell my truth. I just won't tell it. I'll wait until you all love me before I tell the truth. But in the end, that turns into addiction in my older age of, now I'm expecting all of you to love me before I'll even open up and be myself. And the truth is, actually, that no one is going to love you until you open up and be yourself. You see? How can they love you? Because you're actually not being yourself. And how can they love someone who's not having integrity with themselves? So often we're trying to do something out of an addiction to get a certain action that is impossible to achieve. And in your case, the action is, everybody love me and then I'll tell you the truth. And there's a bit of anger in that, obviously, isn't there? Like, you've all got to love me first. You naughty person, you didn't love me there, you didn't love me. There's that kind of feeling.
I honestly don't feel that about everybody, only probably about two people in my life, my mum and my dad. Yeah. Can I just deconstruct an untruth for you? Right.
Here's your dad. Here's your mum. If you feel something towards your dad and your mum, every male is going to be the object of your dad's stuff, And every female is going to be the object of your mum stuff. So that means that there's 3.4 billion men that you feel the same way about as you feel about your dad.
Yeah.
And there's 3.4 billion women around about that you feel the same way as you do about your mum.
Yeah.
And it's very important to see that. It's not... So when you say to me, oh, it's only about dad and mum, you're really saying, actually, no, this is about every man and woman on the planet.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And it is about that.
So how to fix it?
So how to fix it first, I've already said, and that is to understand the addiction exists. That you want every male and female, and it's a bit different with male and female at the moment. You are more... the feeling I have is the problem from you is the problem is more with females than even males, like to tell the truth. You're a bit more willing to tell the truth with men than you are with women. But there is still the requirement that they love you before you do it. Right? That they actually must have a good feeling. You must have a good feeling from them. They must want to know you before you'll speak the truth. Right? And you need to give this addiction up. And the way you give an addiction up is you firstly usually get angry that it's not happening, and then you get into your grief about the fact that nobody here wants to love you. Because nobody here wants to listen to you. So they don't want to love you. And you let yourself grieve that. No, I'm not saying that's the truth.
Yeah, I know.
But that's the feeling you have from your mum and dad.
Yeah.
Your mum and dad basically were people who just wanted you to remain completely verbally invisible.
Yeah.
That's how they felt about you. Right? They wanted you to stay in that state. Right? And that's one of the biggest issues you face, obviously. And that creates this flip side addiction. All of you must love me before I will actually speak to you. All of you must love me before I'll tell you the truth about me. So what I'm suggesting is tell the truth about yourself. Write it down, even to yourself. Start telling the truth about yourself. Start telling the truth about how much you've been closed down by mum and dad. Tell the truth to mum and dad. You know, write a letter to them, even though they've passed. Write letters to them. And if they're here, they're passed, both have passed. So write letters to them and read it out. Say, Mum and Dad, I want you to come here and you have a listen to this. Right? And read out the letter you've written. This is how I feel you should... start speaking the truth about these things. Now, the problem with the thing you're facing is that you've also attracted a spirit who doesn't want you to speak the truth. So they don't want you to know, that to actually verbally communicate how you really feel either, because they are just as frightened as you are. And one thing you're not acknowledging is how frightened you are of actually speaking the truth. There's a terrible, terrible fear in you about this. Like, it's just an intense fear about speaking the truth. And that's it. Now you're connecting with that emotion. That's it. It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Just allow yourself to connect to the fear you have, how frightened you are. And can you see this is related to punishment as a child, about speaking the truth, about telling mum and dad how you feel and all those kind of things? So allow yourself to connect with that emotionally.
I told the truth and I got belted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time, pretty much.
I did.
Yeah. So you need to allow yourself to feel, firstly, how terrified you are about speaking the truth. And it's this terror that you have. That's it. Allow yourself to feel it's beautiful. And that's it. And it's this terror that you have about speaking the truth that has closed down this part of your body. Does that make sense? Yeah. Just let yourself feel it. By the way, there's a room out the back here if anybody wants to go out there. There's a room where you can turn on heaters if you want to process things rather than stay if you don't want to stay. The beauty of all of our body responses is they tell us the truth about what's really going on for us. That's the beauty of it. And when you connect into that, you will always connect into the emotion. And the truth is, when you do that and you allow the grief to flow, the anger automatically dissipates anyway. Does that make sense to everyone? The anger is there due to frustration and other issues.